Yeah, so welcome back. We are going to continue our discussion on relations. Previously, we looked into various properties of relations where we talked about your reflexivity, irreflexivity, symmetry, asymmetry, antisymmetry, transitivity, and so on and so forth. And then we talked about your equivalence relations. We talked about your equivalence classes. We talked about your properties of equivalence classes, and then we looked into the pictorial representation of relations, where we said that we have the options like graph representation, a very simple one which further can be used for identifying whether with the help of the diagram or the digraph only we will be able to conclude that of whether a particular relation is reflexive or asymmetric or antisymmetric or symmetric or maybe transitive in nature. And then we looked into the matrix representation of these relations. We also looked into the arrow diagrams. We talked about your composition of relations, and then we said that okay, since these relations are nothing but the sets in the form of ordered pairs, then all those operations which were there, which were applicable in case of sets, we can also apply here as well. So we said that okay, we can have union of two relations, we can have intersection of two relations, we can have difference of two relations, and additionally we can have your symmetric difference of two relations. So in today's lecture we are going to talk about your closures of relations. So to start with, what we have is that let's take same R and let it be any relation on our set A, and your R may or may not have property P1, such as, properties will be those only, your reflexivity or maybe your symmetry or maybe your transitivity. So if there is a relation S with property P such that S is the subset of, now focus on this line, S is the subset of every relation with property P containing R, then S is called the closure of R with respect to P. And we can obtain closures, or maybe closures of relations to be very specific, with respect to the property P in the following ways. One is your reflexive closure. So in this, what we do is, first of all, we try to find delta, which is nothing but your reflection or reflexive property, which is the diagonal relation on A, so your reflexive closure of R on set A is given by your R union delta. So what it means is that I have to identify the reflexive closure, and within which I'll be finding all these elements, and then I'll go ahead with union operation. So let's take one example so things will be much more clearer. Let's say I have a set A as usual in the form of, let's say, 1, 2, 3, and then let's say I have a relation R where I have, let's say, 1, 2, I have, let's say, 1, 3, and I have 2, 3. So what I will do is, in order to identify the reflexive closure, what I will get is my R plus, which is the reflexive closure, will be, first of all, I'll get this. That means I'll add 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and then I'll add 1, 2, which is your R, 1, 3, and 2, 3. This becomes my reflexive closure. So what I am trying to do is I'm closing it with the reflection, that is, it is the reflexive closure on R. Let me once again write it. This is something which is to be kept in mind. It is a reflexive closure on R. So this indicates that yes, I am going to have R and I am going to find the reflexive closure. So in that case, what I can do is that I'll identify everything with the help of R union the reflection. So this was about reflexive closure. The next thing which we have with us is your symmetric closure. So in this, what we do is we say that let R be a relation on set A and R inverse be the inverse of R as usual. So in this case, my symmetric closure on R will be your R union R inverse. Now let's take one example. So once again the things will be much more clearer. I have, let's say, the same set A which is in a form of 1, 2, 3, and I have a relation R which is, let's say, 1, 2, I have like 2, 3, I have like 3, 2, let's say, and let's say I have 2, 1. Now I know that in order to get this symmetric closure, I have like S plus, this will be like, I have R which is like 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, and 2, 1. Now I'll add R inverse, so I have to add 2, 1, which for this particular thing, but I know that I already have 2, 1, so I don't need to add further. Right, next is 3, 2, that means the inverse of this. Right, I hope everyone is aware about the inverse. We are changing the domains and ranges. So I already have 3, 2, which is here, so I don't need to add. Then I have like 3, 2, once again, if I'm inverting it, I'm getting 2, 3, which is already here. for this particular thing, so I don't need to, and 2 comma 1, so I'm getting 1 comma 2. That means for this I have something like this. So eventually the example which I took is covering everything, so I don't have to worry about this. That means here my reflexive closure is equivalent to the relation R. This is just by chance, right? This is just by the random example which I took, or else we could have brought some changes, so that would have given us a different flavor. So let's take another example so that things will be much more clearer in case of your reflexive and symmetric closure. This time let's take a set A to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and let R be, let's say 1, 1, 1, 4, 2, 3, 3, 1, and 3, 4. Or let me pause here, or else once again I'll generate the entire sequence for you all. So for identifying our union delta, that is your reflexive closure, what I'm going to do is I am simply going to add, first of all, R I'm adding, and then I'll see whether 1 comma 1 is there, already there, so I'll skip it. 2 comma 2, I'll add 2 comma 2, 3 comma 3, and 4 comma 4, because I know reflexive, so I have to add that delta part. I am going for the union operation. Now next is your R union R inverse for your symmetric closure. So in that case, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'll identify your R inverse, so that would be your 1 comma 1 remains as it is. Then I have like your 4 comma 1, I have 3 comma 2, I have 1 comma 3, then I have 4 comma 3. Now this R union R inverse will be this union this. So what I'm getting is 1 comma 1 I have covered, and then I am going to get, let's say 1 comma 4 and 2 comma 3, 3 comma 1, 3 comma 4. So in some sense I have covered 1 comma 4 here, 2 comma 3 here, 3 comma 1, 3 comma 4, and then I have to see 4 comma 1. Yeah, I'll add it, sorry. And then 3 comma 2, and then 1 comma 3, and then 4 comma 3. That's how I am going to get this. So this thing is giving me the reflexive closure on R, and this thing is giving me the symmetric closure. Now the next one is which I'm taking it separately, which I'm taking separately is your transitive closure. So here what we do is that let your R be a relation on set A. So your transitive closure R star is defined as union of n equals to 1 to infinity R to the power n, and where R star is nothing but the transitive closure of R. So after this example, let's move to your transitive closure. After your reflexive symmetric, let's move to your transitive closure. So once again, let's start with our R being a relation on set A. So the transitive closure is defined as your R star, which is equals to union n equals to 1 to infinity R to the power n, and this can also be written as your, in some of the literatures, your transitive RT plus. This is where R star or your RT is the transitive closure. And let's take one example so things will be much more clearer. And let's take the same set 1, 2, 3, 4, and then let's take the relation R, whereas I have like 1, 2, I have like 2, 3, and let me pause here so it will make things much more simpler for me. So the transitive closure for this is T, this is plus, will be like, I have like R obviously as it is. Now I have to do the union for the transitive closure. So anyways, the transitive for this particular thing will be 1 to 2, 2 to 3. So 1 to 3 is also missing. So if I'll simply add 1, 3, that will serve the purpose. That is going to serve the purpose. Now this was about the transitive closure. Now let's talk about your partial ordering relations. Now let's talk about your partial ordering relations. So a relation R on set A is called a partial order if R is reflexive, that is your ARA, where for every A existing in set A, and then I have like anti-symmetric, right, where I have like my ARB and BRA implying A equals to B for all A comma B existing in A, and I have like transitive once again, which means your ARB and BRC implying ARC for all A comma B comma C existing in A. A set A together with the partial ordering is called as a partially ordered set, or it is also called as poset. Right, so what we say is this poset is denoted by A comma R. Right, so let's talk about the partial ordering notation for poset. So what we do is we use like A, and we use this symbol B when your A comma B exists in R, and we use this and single this when A comma B exists in R and your A is not equal to B. So this particular notation is used for denoting any partial ordering. There is another topic which I thought to add just to give you a basic idea, which is your hash diagram. Now, just like relations and functions, your partial orders have a convenient graphical representation which is called as hash diagrams. So, your posets are represented using graphical representation called as hash diagram. So since we are dealing with partial order, so we know that your relation must be reflexive, right? Your relation, and your antisymmetric, and your transitive. So what we do is we simplify the graph. So what we can do is we can remove all the self loops. So we'll be able to identify from relation I can form the graph or the digraph, and if we follow these steps we'll be able to get the hash diagrams. Self loops, and remove all transitive edges, and the last one is I can remove directions on edges, assuming that they are oriented upwards. Yeah, see, as I said, this is like I have added just to give you a basic idea. Now there is another thing which is called as your totally ordered set or the linearly ordered set. So what it means is that this is basically a poset in which every pair of elements is comparable. So what the comparable means, that the elements A comma B exists in A are said to be comparable if either your A is less than B or B is less than or equals to A holds. That means I can compare something. In that case, I can declare that yes, this is something which is a totally ordered set or a linearly ordered set. So this was all about your sets. Now let's introduce a new topic, which is your functions. So now when we talk about functions, this particular thing, that is your function, is nothing but a special type of relation. The relation which we studied in our previous videos and even in this video. And your functions are also called as mappings. And even these functions are called as transformations. So let A and B be two non-empty sets a function f from A to B is the set of ordered pairs that is f being subset of A cross B with a property that for each element x which is present in your A, there is a unique element let's say y which is present in set B such that your x comma y exists in F. So a function from A, that means a set A to set B, is denoted by f from A to B and represented pictorially as let's say I have on this side I have set A, on this side I have on B I have a function f, this. So what we have is a function f which is a mapping from A to B. That's why, you know, in the basic definition we said that these are also called as mappings or the transformations. Now, if let's say f is a function from A to B, then set A is called the domain of the function f, you can say, and set B is called the, not the range this time, it is codomain. So if suppose x and y exist in F, it is customary to write y is equals to f of x. So where y is called the image of x, x is called the pre-image of x, sorry, pre-image of y, and y is also, you can say, called the value of f at x. So the set containing all the images of elements of A under the function f is called the range of f, and it is denoted by f of A. So I am adding one more thing, which is that the set containing all the images of elements of A under the function f is called the range of f, and is denoted by f of A. Now these terms will be much more clearer when we'll see or when we'll go into much more depth of function, but these functions may be classified into two groups. On one side I have the algebraic functions, and on another side I have your transcendental functions. So what can be your algebraic functions? Obviously your polynomial functions I can have, and I can have, let's say, relational function, I can have your irrelational function, and on this side I can have, let's say, the trigonometric functions, I can have, inverse trigonometric functions, I can have exponential, I can have logarithmic, and so on and so forth. So let's take a logical pause over here, and in our next video we are going to cover the types of functions, which are like your injective, surjective, and your bijective, your into function, your many one function, your identity function, and your constant functions, and we have, let's say, we'll talk about your composition of the functions. We'll also look into the inverse of a function. So all these things we are going to cover in our next video. In fact, we'll also cover some special functions as well, which are like your absolute, your floor, your ceiling, and we'll look into some extra topics just like your growth of functions, your Hamming distance functions, and so on and so forth. So let's meet in our next video.